Scott Knight here. Meet the coach, meet the school. Good friend Carlo Acquista with Fordham. I've had the pleasure of knowing Carlo for many years, right, all the way back to your playing days as a youth player, then into college. Very active locally here in New York. Very active in the community as well. Family business with restaurants over there in St. John's. And somebody that has really covered the landscape of university soccer and has really done some really, really good things as a player, both on and off the field, and then on the coaching side of things. And we'll let him talk a little bit about those experiences and those accomplishments that he's had, which I think are really important. And I can't emphasize enough, a New York guy that stuck around in New York and making a big difference here. So, Carlo, thanks for being a part of us.
No, I appreciate the invite. Was looking forward to this for the last couple of days. And I know we can't really connect and there's not a lot of Q&As with people around, but we'll do the best we can. I think you and I can figure this out well, but thank you. Honestly,
no problem.
Thank you.
So let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at, right, as a coach. So let's start off on the youth side of things, right? Where you grew up, your hometown, the clubs you played for, on the youth side, right? Before college, all of those experiences, guys you grew up playing with, guys that have accomplished some other things as well, and some coaches that had some influences on you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'd love to share anything about myself and growing up, because I think every story is unique, right? And wherever they come from. I grew up in Whitestone, Queens. I would say I'm a Queens kid, and I love everything about it. But I do live on Long Island now. Don't hold that against me to begin with. I grew up in the Bayside soccer club early on, locally. Having your dad as the coach, right? There was no paid trainers, and a couple of other guys that he was friendly with, and kind of just brought in, and it worked. It worked pretty well. We were tough kids from Queens. I played a year up with my brother on the 77 team. We ended up going to the State Cup final at U13, and we were pretty good, right? And we played against, if you remember this name in basketball, Wally Zerbiak.
Of course,
so
yeah.
Wally Zerbiak, we get to the field, and no joke, it's like, holy, this guy's tall. How are we going to stop him? Now, Queens kids are always pretty good with the ball. I think he was playing for Cold Spring Harbor at the time, right? And we get to the final. It's 2-1 at halftime. They're winning. It's a real good game. They're really strong athletically. We got some soccer in us, some toughness. He scored, I think, 4 goals in the second half on headers. We lost 7-1 in the State Cup final. So that's my first impression of a young age at Bayside, which was awesome. And then from Bayside, we kind of joined forces with Auburndale Soccer Club. And a gentleman named Giulio Petrucelli kind of took over the reins. And then my dad assisted, and other people assisted. Now, Giulio's family is pretty well known with 4 kids. Armando Petrucelli played at Harvard, Teresa at BU, and then Felipa and Jojo, had a nice career as well. But he was one of our favorite coaches in the neighborhood because he was tough on us, but he loved us at the same time. So it kind of worked out really well, and he had really good experiences. Then I thought I wanted to play my own age. I wanted to be able to maybe dominate my own age or try to have more of an influence in the game at my own age. I was doing a pretty good job playing up, and that's kind of where it took me to the next level of playing for Comac United out in Long Island, which was a trek and a half. But I was able to get out there with a couple of people, and it helped with the rides. And Kevin Anderson, at that point, when nobody was really doing it, had this like mini academy, you can call it now. It was more of just like a premier team, right? Back then they would call it premier teams. Went out to play for Comac, was able to win a couple state cups, got it to the regionals a few times, regional finals. We get to the regional finals, who do we lose to? Tim Howard and the New Jersey Knights. It's like, you can't beat these next level guys, right, at the pro teams. But that was kind of my unique, from Bayside to Auburndale to Comac through up to U17. And then from there, from the high school, I went to Holy Cross. Why Holy Cross? Besides it being, maybe 2 miles from the house, anybody that went to a Catholic high school in that area went to Holy Cross to play soccer. I went to follow in the footsteps of guys like Vinny Maimone, Jack Gaeta, Joey Navarino, Rob Cairo, all these local guys that went there. I grew up in my neighborhood. And then obviously guys like Armando Petrocelli, Jimmy Buscemi, right? And then it was my next year, 78. And it was the best experience of my life because besides, a little bit of discipline that we all needed a bit, we won a lot of games and we had a really, really good team. And from there, there's 7 of us kind of went out into the D1 soccer world, and Harvard, St. John's, UNC Charlotte, NC State, we went to pretty good schools at that time. So there was a reason why I went to Holy Cross, because of the people ahead of me, right? The traditions of Holy Cross. So that's where I ended up at Holy Cross. And then at that time, a young Dave Mazur really influenced Holy Cross and would take their best player every year, for lack of better ways of saying it. And I just kind of followed, staying in Queens. If these guys can do it, I want to kind of keep going and progressing, doing the same thing. And fortunately for me, as a freshman, got to play quite a bit, and we won a national championship. So,
St. John's. We're talking about at St. John's.
Sorry. After Holy Cross, I headed to St. John's. Yes, following the footsteps of other guys coming out of Holy Cross. Dave Mazur recruited us, and ended up at St. John's and won a national championship. And honestly, any career has ups and downs, but I loved every minute, of my time at St. John's University.
So let's talk about St. John's. I was fortunate enough to see you play multiple times over there. Fit in for me at the time, right? Watching you play some pretty big matches at Adelphi, right, on the grass. You had some pretty big influence in the games, in some important games. A unique skill set you had to maybe the rest of the group, and how St. John's was set up, and how Dave was playing. For me, my style of player, technical player, cerebral player, right, could make some good passes, get into good spots, cut things out. So talk a little bit about your experiences at St. John's. You guys won some big trophies there, and were one of the premier, if not the universities at that time, right, in the country. Dave did a fantastic job, and primarily all local players as well. So on that, why don't you touch a little bit about your style as a player? Also,
sure.
I think that's important for everyone to hear.
I also, style of play kind of also most of the time goes into where you grew up, right? What as a kid, I followed any style of soccer, but I grew up with a lot of Latino kids, ethnic kids in Queens, Flushing, Queens, things like that. So I very quickly I learned that I have to be good with the ball, smart with the ball. All right. Because if you lose it, you're getting yelled at, right? So that was very important to me. And I also wanted to always influence the game somehow. I wasn't the fastest, right? I wasn't the most athletic. So I figured, how can I influence the game with my brains and my feet? And that's where I kind of started working on my skill set of maybe what you just said, cutting things off quicker, seeing things quicker, watching more soccer games on TV, but also analyzing it. I guess I was coaching myself at a very young age. And that's kind of why I'm still in the game as a coach. That's really how I think about it. I was always trying to figure things out. We playing growing up on the regional team, in the regional pool games. I know Kyle Rackow from Georgetown is so much faster than me. So how am I going to cut off his speed of play? And how do I defend him, not to get too close or too far from him? So all those things I always took into account, and maybe other players take for granted, but I couldn't. I had to really be a thinker during the game. Going to St. John's as a freshman, the only thing I thought about doing was getting fit, because it's the biggest thing that is kind of ingrained. And how do I influence the game when I get the ball, right? And being a good teammate. Those are kind of 3 things that I knew was important. Ended up kind of starting to influence the game and getting onto the field quite a bit. Obviously, as a freshman, maybe you got benched a couple of times, whatever. But in the long run, it was fantastic, because that year, 96, kind of fit the way I played. A little bit more soccer, a little bit more of fast and slow, not just fast, maybe later on in the years.
So how'd you find the level moving from Holy Cross to St. John's? And how was the experience both on and off the field?
So the level was interesting. Like I said, I always had to think faster than play faster, right? So my thought process was always very high, forget it, not being so fast and athletic. So I kind of quickly gelled in, maybe quicker than other people, just because I have a bit of a brain and good feet. You know, you once told me when I was recruiting Mauricio More at Adelphi, you know, he'll always figure it out and find himself on the field. Well, that's the best you could have said, because he played 6 different positions and he's never came off the field, you know, and that's kind of what I look for now in a player, which will kind of go, you know, later on in that. On and off the field was great. You know, I grew up 5 miles away, was able to live in the apartments at school, you know, was able to go home at the same time, got the best of both worlds, you know, and made lifelong friends out of the school. So for me, it was a perfect match, I think, in the long run, than going somewhere else.
So let's talk a little bit now after university, right? Your playing days. Now you get into being a coach. Who was some of the influences for you to become a coach? And then let's talk about the different stops along the way that you've made from the beginning up until where you're in Fordham. I think that's really important, because you've really touched in some pretty cool areas and some good places here locally.
I'll start off with influence. Who had the most influence? Look, besides my father early on, right, just throwing me out there and coaching, that was a major influence of teaching me not to be afraid and find your way early in life, you know? And that's something I would like to do with my kids, just get them out there as quickly as possible and let them find their way. But one person that sticks in, that is not even a super soccer person, is a guy named Paul Gilvari. Paul Gilvari was our high school coach at Holy Cross. Major player in the basketball world, you know, excellent high school basketball coach. But one thing he did was, it didn't matter the tactics or the game. He knew he had great players. He knew how to influence us in a way of motivation, organization, getting us to buy into his stories that maybe if he was telling, you know, lying or fibbing, whatever doesn't matter. He had a major influence on a guy who can relate and really motivate his players. Like, that was a massive for me. One part with Coach Mazur, that besides him being a very good soccer person, one thing he did for me was, as a young player at St. John's, he threw me into coaching. He had teams out in Long Island, I think Hewlett at the time, and he couldn't make it a few times, remember?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
And he would throw me and he goes, "Can you go out here and do this session? And can you coach this game for me?" So that sticks out later on, right? Not early on, like, what am I doing? Oh, great, I'm going to go. But that's kind of what stuck out. And then he let me stay on for another semester as like a student volunteer assistant coach early on. So those two, my high school and my college coaches, had major influences. But then you could talk about guys like Alfonso Mondello, right? He'll let me come down and train with the Rough Riders from a young age all the time. And he didn't treat me any different. He gave me very good advice, and, you know, he made sure to coach me through stuff. I went to his camp. So all these 3 different types of people had some type of influence in my coaching, why I led up into coaching.
So let's get into that now, right? Get into your coaching right away at the university level. So give us, from that point, right, let's touch a little bit on your experience at Red Bulls, which obviously had a major impact. And then let's talk about Fordham right now.
Yeah, I'm going to start off with how I got the job at St. Francis, right? It's an interesting way. So after college, or right when we were graduating college, my dad was always in the food business, right, in Manhattan. And then he went into distribution of the food supply business. And we just talked about him coming into Queens instead of staying in the city. So we found an area by St. John's to put an Italian restaurant. Obviously, I went right into work with the brothers and my dad, right, at the restaurant. And then from there, I knew I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to get back into coaching, right? And I get a phone call one day. I'm actually working lunch from Paul Gilvari, my high school coach. And he says, "Look, you want to get involved in coaching?" I said, "Yeah, eventually I do, you know, but right now I'm helping the restaurant." He said, "Well, St. Francis College is looking for a coach." I said, coach, I don't know anything about coaching. He goes, yeah, but you'll be perfect. You're a young guy. You'll be passionate about it. If you want to do this, I think I can help you get the job. All right. He gets me an interview with Ed Aquilone. And the irony of it was Ed Aquilone, the AD at St. Francis, was calling Paul Galvari about basketball. Because what happens is Paul was the commissioner of the Catholic High School League, and they were renting the facility at St. Francis. Well, in conversation, Mr. Aquilone would say, Paul, you're involved in soccer. You know a lot of people. I'm looking for a soccer coach. Do you have anybody in mind? So that's how it kind of blossomed. So Paul had a major influence of my first interview in landing the job at St. Francis. At St. Francis was the best and the worst experience of my life, right? What do I mean by the best? The best is learning, growing, trying to find your way as a young coach. The worst is didn't win many games at all. But I found that within myself, Scott, that I wasn't going to give up. Like, I'm not that type of person. I'm always going to try to figure it out. Was fortunate enough, Delphi calls out of the blue. I did have a relationship with Adelphi through St. John's. Going back to what you said, we used to play our games there. Yeah. So the athletic director was a soccer guy, so he knew who I was and made some phone calls and called me in the summer of 2006, I think it was, right? A few days before preseason, and I was ecstatic, right? You left an area of St. Francis, New York, which is awesome. They're doing a fantastic job. But I was able to get a parking lot at Adelphi, a parking space, right? I had to take the train or I had to pay for parking, there. So those little things count. Got the job at Adelphi and quickly just kind of figured it out a little bit more, little by little, just figured it out. I relied a lot on Scott Knights of the world in New York, right? The Gotchis, the local clubs to try to send some players and work with them a little bit more. And we started getting local guys. Like, if you remember that first recruiting class, I think I had Kevin Garcia, Walter Hines, and Mauricio Mora all in the same trip. Yeah, okay? That's right, recruiting trip. Mauricio ends up coming to Adelphi. Kevin goes to Villanova, and Walter goes to St. John. So everyone's pretty much decently local. So that was John Koutsanatis, right? Michael Aquino, all guys. So I kind of went into who I knew and what I knew about Queens and grew it from there. And then it kind of just blossomed and it became an animal of its own. And I thought in the long run, we were very, very, very good at Adelphi with the support that they gave us.
Unique thing while you were at Adelphi, right? Started off at Division I and then made that transition to Division II and had some really big seasons there, right? Before you moved on to the next piece.
Yeah, when we were early on in Division I, we still had a conference. We had an identity. And then the university was always Division II, right? We were the only Division I program there. And we thought it was the best. And I agreed, let's try to win a championship or championships. So we moved into the Northeast 10, which is one of the most competitive conferences in the country in Division II. And always scheduled pretty good, as you know. We always opened up against LIU Post, okay? Right. Yeah. Which was awesome. Andreas Lindbergh made me better. Mark Hubbard from Southern New Hampshire made me better. Why? Because they had the best teams around, and I wanted to, beat them, and it made us better. So it's always a fun rivalry to have against people that you like and know and respect. We went and then from there, I felt that it was time to move on from Adelphi. I was there 11 seasons. I think I gave whatever I could to the school and university.
Yeah, I would agree. Long time there, won some trophies, right? Won some championships, went deep into the NCAA, and then now moving into the pro side of things.
And I had the pleasure, and I was very fortunate to work with Chris Armas for a few years. He got the call to go to the Red Bulls as assistant coach under his friend Jesse Marsh. And when this position opened up, I felt that, I wanted to give it a chance, right? I want to give it a shot, try to get into the pros and work my way up. Thank for Chris introducing me to the right people and going on an interview, and I was able to get the position and learned a lot. I really, really enjoyed it. I really can't say anything negative about the position. It's more on internally for me why I thought college or going back to coaching, I would say was more what I was looking for at that moment.
So let's talk about Fordham now, right? Heavily involved into building a team, heavily involved into those experiences back again now at the Division I level. And tell us what it's like with Fordham right now.
We took over a program, myself and Phil Bannister, my coaching staff, Rich and Sachi, that was pretty successul, right? The quarterfinals in 2017.
You did a great job. Great job.
Yeah. In 2017, made the NCAA 3 of the last 6 years. He knew how to win his conference. He knew how to build a team. He had it going on. And we felt that we want to keep that going, obviously. So, but, every coach and every staff can do things a little bit differently, right, to get to the same outcome. And right now, we finished the season with his group, with mostly his guys, and it was very good. The second half of the season, these guys gave us everything. They were fantastic. We get to the conference semifinals. We host. I think a little unfortunate not to get to the final during that game. We lost to penalties to URI. And that's how we ended the season on a very high positive note. And from there, I think we're trying to create this, I would say, new culture under me or new identity of how we want to play. And that's what we've been working on right now through our recruiting, right? And through some, I would say, some group kind of exercises or webinars or Zoom calls that we're doing right now.
So tell us a little bit about the school and the program for maybe some that aren't that familiar, and tell us what's the type of player that fits, like that. How does somebody between academics, between soccer, the financial aspect, the location, like what's a Fordham player for you? So a little bit about the school and what a player looks like that you're trying to bring in.
The one thing that I think you'll know, because it's kind of our age era, the alumni actually have a great alumni base. That's part one, right? When you're having a great alumni base, that's going to be an extension of the program and really push the program's name and the staff and the players. I love that part of it, the alumni network. I think that's really important when you want to get to the next level of playing, that support from the external side. Internally, we'll say the support's fantastic too. I was hired by Charlie Elwood, who's the former associate athletic director at St. John's, who's now the deputy AD at Fordham, and also a gentleman named David Roach, who both have success in hiring coaches, soccer coaches. One was at Brown, who hired Trevor Adair and Mike Noonan at the time, right? Sure. And obviously Charlie Elwood, who hired was part of hiring Jimmy and now myself, and being on soccer committee. So really going to Fordham, I knew there was going to be a good support system with soccer. And it's good to say that because basketball's king, football's king, right? All over the place. But their support system with soccer is very, very, very good. They want to see us win and do well and bring in very good kids and very good students. Now the combination is I would say, you've got to have a good soccer IQ and you got to have a good education IQ. If you can mix those two together on the field, we're going to be very difficult to beat every year because you have thinkers on the field now. You have people that are going to challenge you the right way, people that are competitive, people that want to be winners in life. So that's kind of the direction we've gone, is that mentality. Do you have the mentality of being a very good student, a very good soccer player, having a high IQ in both areas, and are you competitive enough? So that's kind of what we look for in a quick nutshell, besides not getting so technical on everything.
Sure. Well, anything you want to leave off with, which would be a piece of advice or something unique to parents, players, others that are listening that could possibly have an impact at Fordham and have the pleasure of you being their coach?
Well, first of all, let me say that right now through this coronavirus, pandemic, don't stop recruiting us. Send us videos, call us, email us. Stay in touch with your coaches. We're trying to do the same thing, with the schools that you're interested in. Maybe it's not Fordham, but somewhere else. don't fall into the trap that I'm not playing. It's okay. We can find games on you. That's one part that I want to make sure they understand, that we're always working. We're still working. We're getting on the phone. We're watching games. We're still recruiting. That part I think is important, that people don't fall off. But in closing, for me, I used to go to soccer camps at Fordham, okay, as a kid for Frank Schnurr. So I've done a whole, kind of circle of life back there, in the Bronx. And you forget how beautiful the school is. You forget how safe the school is. You forget about how the school could influence your life for a very long time, And I think people should really see that a little bit more, especially the local. We want to get more local New York flavored players, right? And I say that in a very positive way, because that's who I was. And guess what? I was able to win a national championship at St. John's, staying in New York, having New York, New Jersey players around with a couple of internationals. So why can't we do that again at Fordham? It doesn't, we have the facilities, we have the support. It's a great academic school. It's a sweatshirt school, right? People wear the sweatshirt Fordham. So that's one thing I would like to enclose. It worked for me. It could work for you, staying in New York.
No, it's a great point. Huge fan of the place, beautiful place, a lot of friends. You mentioned alumni and the support that you're getting. So some great people that are there. Carlo, I appreciate your time. Truly good friend. Wish you all the best. You're doing great things there, as you always have in the previous places. We enjoy working with you. We enjoy the time that you're able to spend. Thank you very much for today.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And, for you and Marco, thank you for everything you do for us, with NGO Sports, on the recruiting side and the promoting side. Anything we've always asked you for any help. You've always, given it to us. So thank you so much.
Stay healthy, stay well, stay safe, my friend.
Take care.